Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all doing great, as I always say, following the 3 H's of the channel and all that good stuff. And in this video, it's all about Canada. So it's gonna get weird, strange, and scary. We got Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan, BC, and more. So definitely, pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. I've talked about this before, but here we go again. My parents bought a house in BC, Canada, near the border. The property is 18 acres, 3 of which is fenced in. There's a trailer and another building on our property. The trailer only has 1 bedroom. The other building is maybe 20 meters away or so from the trailer, and I have to go outside the fence in order to get to the front door. My front door leads right into the forest. So one night, I'm just playing video games and vibing out, and then I hear scratching at the door. I was pretty sure at the time that it was a raccoon or something, so I go and kick the door. It runs away. Later on, we get sensor lights all around the building. Once again, I hear scratching. I notice that the sensor light went off. I look out. There's some dark figure sitting there. I could barely see the top of its head. I freak out and I hide. It leaves eventually. I get my dad. He gets the dog and the shotgun to look for it. He finds nothing. I'm sleeping on the couch in the trailer, and this same thing happens a couple more times. I'm beginning to think it's my brother playing the prank on me. It always happens at the same time, so I wait and crouch at the door. There's a window on the door if you didn't know. And then I hear it. The sensor light goes off. I jump up to scare my brother, and my God, what I saw is burned into my memory. It looked like a gray, like an alien gray. The only difference I could see was that it had a smaller head and very slightly smaller eyes. They were a little angled differently as well, but it had a wide mouth, long limbs, and it was down on all fours. I screamed. It stood up and ran away. Me and my dad searched for it. We found nothing. I now sleep with a gun in my room. I was told it was a skinwalker or a wendigo, but I don't think it was. On my res, Oneida, outside of London, Ontario, Canada, we have something called witch lights. Basically, if you go roaming any bushy or wooded area, basically anywhere off the roads at nighttime, they will chase you. I don't know why, but they are only bound to the woods. We here also believe in little people. Basically, if you question their existence or talk shit about them, they will make themselves known. Also, if you are ever lost in a wooded area, you can put tobacco down and ask for their assistance to help you out. If you truly don't believe in them, or you're just going to be a dick, they will lead you further in. We also believe in not whistling at night. It brings bad spirits around. You should just get a dash cam and go cruise some of your closest reses at night for a few hours. I'm sure you'd catch some interesting stuff. I honestly believe that any res in North America are the most haunted places in Canada. That reminds me of a story that my uncle told me once. He was walking home late at night after a party. Since a lot of reses are small, you can almost always accept a ride if somebody pulls you over. Long roads, houses far apart. Anyways, he gets in, and it's this guy that he's never seen before, but he starts driving. There's small talk and whatnot. He never did mention his name. Eventually, this guy asks my uncle if he needs or wants anything, offering anything he wanted. Instantly, my uncle thought of in his head, didn't say it out loud, but he thought of a big bag of weed rolled into joints. 2 seconds later, this mystery driver pulls out the exact bag of joints perfectly how he pictured it. Right there, my uncle said that this is my place up here, I can walk from here, and gets out and starts walking the opposite way. The car drives off, and my uncle looked back 2 seconds later to see that the car and the person had completely vanished. He honestly believes that he hopped in a car with the devil and doesn't know what would happen to him or his life if he had accepted the gift from the devil. This happened way back in 2010. I was camping in Algonquin Provincial Park in Ontario, Canada. I was going for a hike with my cousins on the Spruce Bog Boardwalk Trail. We're all walking, chatting, and having a great time really, when we smell something that's god-awful. We insert fart jokes, and we think it's the bog, and we just carry on. Eventually, the smell goes away. We're at the last leg of the boardwalk trail. If you've ever been, it's a slightly wooded area, but still pretty boggy, before the big rock, but after the big open spot. We have a weird feeling, and we look to my right, and the smell comes back with a vengeance. We see what must be an 8-foot tall, arms and legs looking like bone-white sticks, very solid rib-like torso, and a stump of a head with beady black eyes on the very top of the forehead area. It's completely devoid of hair and looking directly at us. We instantly lose our shit. We're screaming and pointing. My cousins see it as well. We all run screaming. Mind you, we're all like 6 feet tall, 200 pounds region, with decent muscle mass. We run screaming. We got back to the parking lot eventually. We weren't followed. The smell didn't follow us. And we swore that we were never going to walk that trail again. Here's what is basically the short version of an interesting experience I had while out in my local backcountry. To this day, I'm not sure what the hell my friends and I saw and heard. It gives me goosebumps and makes me look over my shoulder just recalling the whole thing. So I live on the Canadian West Coast. There's dense forest, mountains, and glorious camping everywhere where I live. I was camping at the end of a remote ATV trail with a couple of buddies. One trail in, one trail out. Nobody else for miles. Complete silence. We wake up around 5 a.m. to a weird rhythmic sound. A thump, thump, thump. It sounds like the bass coming from a distant nightclub with its doors shut. The sun isn't quite up yet. The sky is just turning from black to blue. Just barely enough light to navigate the camp without a flashlight. I get out of bed and I look around for the noise. I think maybe somebody has a radio. Maybe they left it on. I hear it again. Thump, thump, thump. My friends are waking up now too. They also hear it. They're cranky, and a few are slightly hungover. We start bickering and accusing each other of playing some kind of stupid joke, telling each other to turn that shit off already. And then I say, "Guys, Be quiet for a second. Do you hear that? It sounds like men muttering quietly in between the thumping noises. Somebody else is nearby. This is very unusual for an area this remote, especially at this hour. I throw a jacket and boots on. I decide to have a look around. I sneak quietly toward the source. Some of my friends are with me. The sound is getting stronger. No, longer sounds, like muttering. We hear the thumps one more time. Between the beats, we can hear what sounds like several men chanting quietly. We begin to crest a small hill, trying to look into a nearby clearing. We can clearly hear loud chanting now. The hair on the back of my neck is standing up. My friends look like they're about to pass out, totally white. We get down on our stomach and we crawl to the top of the hill. I'll never forget what I saw. 4 to 5 large figures standing in a kind of lopsided circle. All of them are well over 6 feet tall, easily. The one smaller figure is sitting at the top of the circle, hitting a drum. These large figures are slowly swaying from side to side, up and down with the beat, and they're chanting. They appear to be very large men dressed in tribal garments. We think that we've walked into some kind of powwow or something, but then we realize that they're not wearing any kind of native clothing, but rather rags and what looked like tan leather scraps draped over them. A couple of them appear to have large, furry, mane type things, kind of like beards, but all the way around. 2 of them, the closest to the drummer, have large antlers, like a stag, coming up from their heads. We obviously know at this point that our initial impression that this was a powwow is very wrong. One friend is clearly freaking out. He tries to turn and leave back to camp. We grab him and tell him to shut up and to calm down. We continue studying this bizarre scene. They haven't noticed us. We are wondering what the hell they're even doing way out here before sunrise. The smaller one, beating the drum, has something hanging off his arms, billowing around with each mallet strike. It looks like possibly feathers or something. My friend can't handle it and tells us that he's getting the hell out of here. He stands up to run back to his ATV. Suddenly, the chanting stops, and they all simultaneously snap their heads into our direction. They're staring at us. I join our friend, sprinting back to our ATVs and fire up the motors. We're shifting as fast as we can, tearing down the dark trail as fast as we could. We never did go back for my cook kit or sleeping bag. So to follow up this story, we talked about that night over drinks at the bar a few times. Then we didn't talk about it for a while. It happened in 2011. We decided that maybe we were just hallucinating. Maybe we were just tripping somehow. One friend suggested that maybe it was just the local native band that were doing the tradition that they do every spring of calling the salmon or something like that. But I don't know if I'm convinced. The way they all just snapped their heads in our direction, the way they were dressed, it just looked not human. Never mind the antlers. Anyways, one of my friends, who tried to get up and run first, he used to be a serious outdoorsman. He was a rock climber even. After that, he talked to the local tribe, and I don't know everything they told him, but he stopped completely. I know for a fact He hasn't gone camping since that night. He sold all of his climbing gear. He moved to Vancouver and got some kind of office job. The only thing he told me was that when he talked to them and asked them about it, their faces turned white, and they told him some stuff that he doesn't want to repeat. I still camp out in those mountains. I've had a few other frightening experiences, and I always carry a firearm with me now. I recently found the remains of what looks like, possibly, an old burial ground that aren't too far from there. But if the local band said it's not them, what the hell was it? This was sent in to me by Anonymous, so I hope I can do your story justice. This occurred back in October of 1999 when I was in my late teens. My uncle invited me on a long weekend hunting trip to a cabin he rented out in northern Quebec. Me and my uncle were very close, having very similar interests, specifically in hunting. Being an outdoorsy type of person, I agreed to accompany him. It was Thursday night when I left, as my school was off that Friday. I won't disclose where the cabin is specifically located, but I will say that it is located within the Laurentian Mountains, far north of Montreal and Quebec City, far away from any civilization. We arrived at the cabin around dusk. The next day, my uncle took me deep through the woods to hunt some deer and moose. It was a brisk, cool day where the leaves had already changed colors. We agreed to split up, but not wander off too far, and to remain within eyesight of each other. Unfortunately, I didn't end up finding any deer or moose that day. A few hours later, the sky started to become dark as dusk was approaching, and my uncle told me that it was time to return to the cabin. However, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It looked like a pair of antlers out in the distance. I couldn't give an estimate of how far it was, but it was within my eyesight. I told my uncle about the antlers, and he took his hunting rifle and aimed it at the deer. However, as soon as he was about to pull the trigger, the deer faced our direction. This was no ordinary deer. This thing had red eyes, and it looked angry. What happened next gave me chills. My uncle and I saw this thing just stand up on two hind legs. What the F? I thought to myself. It then faced its head forward before walking into the woods. We then heard a loud, menacing scream. We both ran back to the cabin. We didn't know what we saw that day. Because of this, we decided to cut the hunting trip short and stay at a hotel outside of Quebec City for the remainder of our time together. My uncle and I both agreed to keep this incident to ourselves to avoid sounding crazy, and I wasn't comfortable sharing any weird or strange events to anyone anyways. I have a right to my own secrets. I've never returned to that cabin in Quebec since, nor do I have any plans to return either. Several years later, I did some research on what I saw, and I believe what me and my uncle saw on that cold October day was a Wendigo. This was also sent in to me by Anonymous, so once again, I hope I can do your story justice. I would like to remain anonymous. This happened several years ago, back in February of 2001. My friend, who I will call Jake for privacy reasons, invited me on a long weekend trip to a remote cabin his uncle owned in northern Saskatchewan, and I agreed to join him. So we drove the long 6 hours from my house to get there. Let me give you a brief layout of the grounds before we continue. It was a small, single-story ranch-style cabin with a kitchen, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a living room. There was no electricity or running water, and it was surrounded by forest on all sides. The only way in or out was down a long, unpaved driveway. We arrived at the cabin around dusk. The next day, Jake and I walked around the forest to search for some firewood. After about an hour into the walk, Jake spotted an abandoned house in the distance. It was nestled among a group of trees. This was rather strange, as we were in the middle of nowhere in northern Saskatchewan, and civilization was miles away. Jake wanted to check the house out of curiosity, and although I was hesitant to go inside, I reluctantly accompanied him. We entered through a boarded-up window. Once inside, we were greeted by a musty smell. As we were roaming around, I noticed a door that headed into the basement. Curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I opened the door, and I slowly made my way down the steps. Once I reached the bottom, I froze. There were dimly lit candles in a circular pattern, as if somebody was performing some kind of satanic ritual. I pointed our flashlight across the basement to see if somebody was hiding, but there was no one there. After doing some exploring, I discovered that there was an empty alcove behind the stairs. As I made my way back to the steps, I saw something at the corner of my eye. Under the stairs, which had been cleared just moments before, there was a black figure staring directly at me. It looked to be at least 8 feet tall. Once I saw its eyes, I knew that I was in the presence of something inhuman. A pair of glowing red eyes stared back at me, full of hatred and malice. I then heard a low, repulsive growling. Without hesitation, I bolted up the stairs. Jake was still exploring the empty dining room and heard me come up the stairs. We need to get the hell out of here now. We left through the same way we entered. Our story does not end there. When we finally returned to the cabin, I told Jake everything about what I saw, and to my surprise, he believed me. I didn't see anything myself, but the moment we entered that place, I felt like something evil lived there. I was feeling a bit creeped out myself before you came running up from the basement. We decided to put the whole thing behind us and get some rest. I suddenly woke up to check the time on my watch. It was 2:17 a.m. Things were dark and quiet, but I felt that something was amiss. After a while, I heard subtle footsteps outside the bedroom door. This was also when Jake woke up as well. He woke up like, what's going on? I told him to be quiet and listen. The footsteps became louder. I got up from my bed and made my way over to the bedroom door. I then cracked it to see what was outside. Chills were sent through my body. There was an intruder in the cabin in the far corner of the living room, but it was not human. It was that same creature that I saw in the basement of the abandoned house. The moonlight did not provide an adequate illumination, but I saw the disturbing form twist its head until its eyes were looking back at the bedroom door, or should I say, me. I slammed the door shut, locking it. In a panic, we both fled the cabin through the bedroom window, leaving all of our belongings behind. We ran towards Jake's truck. We both heard a very loud, ear-piercing scream. Jake frantically started the truck and floored it out of there. We remained silent the whole way home, not saying a word about what we saw. It's been nearly 20 years since this event. Jake and I are still friends to this day, but we've never returned to his uncle's cabin. I don't know if what we saw that night was some kind of paranormal entity or an unknown creature living in the woods, but I don't plan nor care to find out. So thank you to Anonymous for sending both of these in, and once again, I hope I could do your story justice. So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to. In the description as well is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel, but no pressure there. Just watching the video, liking, subscribing, commenting, and all that stuff is really good too. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. So, if you did, I'll put a couple other videos up here that, if you're new to the channel, you can check them out. Or if you've seen them before, but like them, you can check them out again maybe. Either way, I hope you have a good week. Thank you for watching, and thank you for pulling up a stump. I'll see you in the next one.